The stage is now ready for Dr. Zsofia Pusztai, WHO representative and head of the WHO country office in the Czech Republic. Her presentation is titled Toward Equitable and Efficient Clinical Trials, WHO Perspectives on System-Level Solutions. Dr. Pusztai will discuss WHO initiatives that are focused on strengthening equitable and interoperable clinical trial ecosystems across borders. Doctor, please begin when you are ready.
Thank you so much and good afternoon, dear colleagues. And it's always a pleasure to talk on behalf of WHO from a bit system level perspective. I really like the word radical transparency. And I would add also out of box office thinking and innovation. But let's jump immediately to the few slides that I wanted to give you, like a highlight practical system level solution where WHO can support countries and partners to build resilient clinical ecosystem, because we really try to strengthen this ecosystem around the clinical trials to support the various layers. Of course, the landmine resolution happened 4 years ago, back to May, exactly the same time, because usually in May we have our governing body meetings, the World Health Assembly, where we adopted a resolution which really recognized the importance of strengthening this global and national clinical trial ecosystem. And have to kind of, it gives a mandate to us as WHO to support countries to build this sustainable clinical trial capacity that improves the health outcomes. But it also reinforces the trial to serve the communities, the patients. And even, unfortunately, I'm hearing you as well. I could not be here during the entire day, but I could be here in the morning and also just entered when someone raised the fragmentation which still exists across various layers. And this global mandate might help to create this kind of shared direction how to move forward for better coordination. Of course, we promote a system approach because clinical trials rely on connected functions, regulations, ethics, clinical sites, data systems, workforce, sometimes even manufacturing. And trials are one pillar of the broader research, development, and innovation ecosystem, but they also should be integrated into the clinical care, so the evidence generation becomes routine. And finally, strong trial ecosystem are part of preparedness. It's very important to have platforms, networks, and streamlined processes to allow faster evidence during crisis, as we have seen in the past time, for example, during COVID. When we have this resolution, we also continued, and 2 years ago, we kind of developed together a guidance, which is really provides a guidance for best practices for clinical trials. It's a kind of global reference standard that is really applicable to all trials and settings. It outlines the 5 elements that I'm not going to read through, but you can see clearly. And I think these principles are especially important because of the operational complexity and because timelines matter. And it really helps to reduce the unnecessary burden while strengthening the participant protection and trust. But itself, let's go step by step for the next one. We also created together with our stakeholders and countries a kind of structured framework for a strong, sustainable national clinical trial research ecosystem. But supported implementation, just recently, also last year, we developed a benchmarking tool for institutional capability for clinical trials, because that really helps clinician research institution assess whether they have the functions, they have the processes, they have the resources and infrastructure needed to deliver that high quality trials across the life cycle. And it's a kind of helping that tool to assess your own system. Where are your strengths? I'm sorry, I'm going back. Where are your gaps? And how you can address and move forward to actions to improve that one. This one way we can turn these global principles into practical and measurable system improvement. But the guide itself, of course, it's not enough. Countries need further support to implement the change. And our approach combines practical tools, capacity building. We have this convening kind of power and networking, and also developing jointly indicators for monitoring frameworks. So these improvements are sustained. This matters because there is still fragmentation, as we discussed, and that creates duplication, delays, or inequity, because equity aspects are very important. So this is essential to accelerate the timelines while we maintain the participant protection. And the program that we are doing, and if you go across the various pillars, you see that we have covered the kind of full pathway. We have this kind of convening and strategizing platform. We develop this guidance. We also have this global action plan for clinical trial ecosystem. We also support implementation through various tools. But what is also important, and I think it was already mentioned in the morning, that we created recently this global clinical trials kind of forum. It's a network. It's for coordination, knowledge sharing, advocacy for adoption of best practices. And I think this is crucial in a time to really change experience, even beyond, of course, the European context, because we also heard some global elements today. What is very critical, of course, is to having these practical tools. These are all very recent developments as well. The first one is the workforce capability is a major factor of whether the clinical trials can be delivered safely, efficiently, inclusively. So we're kind of establishing a clinical trial training resource hub, which is really kind of it's a signpost for training resources, capacity building tools for a broader range of stakeholders, researchers, clinicians, even patients, regulators, anyone who would like to use. Is really, we would like to contextualize the WHO best practice principles in real life scenarios and support this consistent application across the various settings. And these are especially important. We're talking beyond the European context as well, for countries where there is a less mature trial infrastructure, and it is really important to close those gaps and enable participants for multi-country trials. We also just very recently, it's practically just a few weeks it's been finalized, we launched a free self-paced online training course hosted on our WHO Academy platform. You can already download this QR code there. It's 9 modules, it's 4.5 hours. Practically, you got a certificate, but I think it's very important entry point for harmonizing these foundational competencies that are needed and supporting a more consistent trial conduct. It's also important, we always know, we discuss it a lot, even here in the Czech Republic with colleagues from UZIS and ministry, that it's very important to monitor our progress. And it's always a very detailed discussion. What gets measured, of course, gets done, but to help the member states to monitor and improve this ecosystem. And we're developing this kind of progress indicators for the national clinical research ecosystem. And that covers leadership, sustainable funding, the patient engagement, inclusion of the underrepresented populations, access to trainings, the streamlined ethics, and especially adoption of digital technologies. So the goal is really to support accountability as well and have this quality assurance that can then help prioritize the necessary health system reforms that needs to be in place for a better coordinated clinical trial ecosystem. So just to conclude quickly, we now have a shared framework and the reference standards to improve the clinical trial environment. Clinical trial ecosystem strengthening really should be treated as an ongoing sustainability need with any health system reform and innovation strategy, and it shouldn't be that as a one-off project. So countries that invest in this can really attract research and manufacturing investment better. They can develop and retain talent better and improve also outcomes for patients and provide better options even for clinicians. So stronger ecosystem definitely then would reduce the startup delay and improve cross-border collaboration. And more equitable access to trials, ultimately. For these 3 key shifts, we recommend to deliver it in an equitable and efficient way. First, we need to enable access to research for patients, communities, and especially, again, I emphasize repeatedly the underrepresented population. We also heard this morning, for instance, how is the pediatric group is a bit left behind, and there are even more also coming from other countries. So evidence really reflects the diverse needs. Second, we need to enable environment where researchers can perform the high quality research efficiently with timely processes and fewer redundancies. And it's important to create this kind of fit for purpose quality management framework. And third and finally, we need to integrate research into clinical care and health system. That includes also incentives for the healthcare workforce through training and various career pathways. And all these three depends on the education and the capacity building. That's why I mentioned already those existing tools that we just recently created and the stronger coordination across the system. And because I'm talking now from the global perspective on the panel, I also would like to mention that we have a similar kind of platform in the European region as well. We call it Novel Medicines Platform that allows better coordination among the various players. And why I would like to emphasize it, because Czech Republic, who is our host country of this event now, they've been really leading its second working group related to solidarity that also supported this kind of coordination for better evidence during the life cycle as well. And finally, I just would like to mention, if you need any further questions or support, you can reach our team on this email address. And of course, going back to my own root origins, originally I'm also working because this morning it was discussed, the pediatric area. During COVID, I went back to my roots as well, temporarily, and I've seen also the needs and the huge potential developments. And what I didn't mention here, it's really to embrace also the new technologies and AI. We will go back to that in our panel, how we can use it for a more efficient and resilient clinical trial ecosystem. Thank you so much.